Next on The Professional Rule Breaker.
Fletcher Ellingson, creator of The Practice of Feeling Good. I love listening to The Professional Rule Breaker because Kathy wants to make a difference for you, and the way she makes a difference is by bringing high-value content to make a difference in your personal life and professional life. Give it a listen.
Well, welcome back to the Professional Rule Breaker Show. I am your host, Kathy Walterhouse, and yes, I am the Professional Rule Breaker, and I am here to help you succeed. So today, my guest is an individual by the name of Fletcher Ellingson, and he is the best-selling author of a book called The Practice of Feeling Good, which he uses a combination of psychology and science and helps his clients break free from the struggle, the overwhelm, and the worry so that they can live the life that they love. So I am so excited because I want to really dig into this book. So welcome, Fletcher.
Thank you very much. I've been looking forward to being on this show because I love the concept of breaking rules. So
Yes,
yeah, when I saw
in a good
the
way.
name, yes, in a good way, right? Because boy, I'm telling you, man, when we bend or break those rules, pretty exciting things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So is that what caused you to write this book then? I'm just curious.
What caused me to write this book was the clients that I work with all have one thing in common, and they want to feel good. They think that they come to me sometimes because they want to make more money, or they want to launch their business or scale their business, or they want to create greater health and fitness or vitality in their life, right? Or they maybe want to mend a marriage, but really they're doing all of that because they want to feel good. And that's ultimately what we all want, right? Everything that we're chasing and doing is because ultimately it brings us some sense of good feeling. And
Yeah.
underneath that umbrella of feeling good, there's lots of descriptors. But at the end of the day, yeah, we want to have that sense of like, ooh, this feels good, right?
Yeah. I never really thought about it, but you are so right. I mean, I don't know anybody that likes to feel miserable. Maybe there are people out there.
Exactly.
I know I don't. I like being happy. I like feeling good. And that's why your book title, like when I saw that, that like really caught my eye. And I was like, I have got to talk to Fletcher.
Yeah.
So,
And inspiring can feel good, right? When we feel inspired or we feel motivated or when we feel connected, like we're connected right now and this feels good, right? When we're feeling open or willing or optimistic or loving, all right? Or curious even.
mhm.
All of those are under the umbrella of feeling good.
Okay, absolutely. So when you called your book The Practice
Yeah.
of Feeling Good, so what do you mean the practice? Because I think if I had to guess, we all do things that will ultimately not make us feel good.
Yes. And this is such a great question, Kathy, because would you agree that most of us, myself included, are masterfully practiced at not feeling good. We're practiced at feeling jealous or insecure, a scarcity mindset. We're practiced at feeling afraid. We're practiced at feeling, yeah, insecure or not good enough,
Or
right? That's like,
stressed or
or,
anything.
oh,
Yeah.
yes, raise your hand if you feel stressed ever, right?
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Stressed or anxious
Mhm.
is another prevalent one. We're practiced at that. And while we don't intentionally practice it, nonetheless, we are practiced at it. We every time we're doing that, we're practicing that way of being, and we practice it so much that it becomes habitual, becomes like a character trait of ours, right? Like you might know somebody, oh, that guy, oh my gosh, he's so anxious, or oh,
Mhm.
he's so angry, right? We begin to know people by the practiced traits, and when I really, had an epiphany about this, and like, whoa. I've been practiced at a number of, behaviors and ways of being that just weren't serving me at all.
Mhm.
And they felt like it was the truth, right? I mean, I was
Right.
like, well, yeah, of course I'm like that way. I mean, because, and I had all these justifications. But at the end of the day, I was simply practiced at it. And so I began to ask myself, can I become practiced at other emotions and ways of being? In fact, could I become practiced at creating my emotions on demand?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is what this book is about. It's really an introductory course to beginning to create emotions on demand.
Okay. So, I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking a lot of these practices that we do probably start when you're young, like very young.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe even 6, 7, 8, 9, who knows how the younger years it gets formed that way. Maybe it's an influence from your parents or your teachers or whomever it might be, and you start almost repeating that.
Yes.
So how do you break? It's almost like a habit, right? Because
Yes,
a habit is something that you do over and over and over again, and it just becomes routine.
exactly.
So how do you break? First off, practicing the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. How do we begin to interrupt this programming?
Yeah.
And I refer to it as programming because it really is. I liken our brain to an operating system, like on my iPhone here, right? This has an operating system, and it has within that operating system has a whole bunch of different applications, right? Apps. And those apps are designed to do a very specific task. They can only produce results that are in alignment with their programming. And now consider how many times do we have to upgrade our phones, right?
Mm,
Whether you got an Android or an iPhone, you have to upgrade the operating system, right? Here's a question. When's the last time, for your listeners, I'm asking this, when's the last time that you intentionally upgraded the operating system between your ears? Like
wow.
really intentionally upgraded it. And the question is probably, well, oh gosh, I never have. And so this is the opportunity that we have. The opportunity is to begin to upgrade our thinking. How do we do that? And that was your question. Well, we do it by, first of all, getting present and really getting honest about what are my predominant ways of being. Do I spend a lot of time stressed, anxious, fearful, insecure, worried, right? And probably many of the people out there are going, oh, yeah, that's me, right? I'm always worrying about what's next or what might happen or what might not happen. So when we begin to identify these, that's step one. And then the step two is this. Do these ways of being, do they serve my life?
Mm,
And do they feel good? And if the answer is no, then the other opportunity is, okay, what's missing? What would I like to have instead of worry and stress? What would I like to have? Instead of fear, would I like to feel courageous? Right? So we begin to identify the ways of being that we want to have. And then the next step is we begin to practice. And the book, of course, has ways to practice.
wow. I mean, that right then is like such a thought provoking, I would say. First off, just identifying are these ways, the things that you do and the emotions that you have on a routine basis, are they serving you?
Right.
And then making a change. Almost, it's an intentional change, correct? Making an
Correct.
intentional change to practice maybe the emotions that would serve you. So how do you almost draw up those emotions? Because again,
Mm,
I think of some crotchety old person, just a
yes.
crotchety, angry individual. They
Yeah.
recognize that they're angry,
Yeah.
but for them to break that habit's very difficult. And then they have to figure out, okay, how do I
Yes.
become happy? How do I practice? I mean, how do you actually do that? Especially
Okay.
when if you've been stuck in a rut for a while, how do you do that? Hey there, you know I'm all about making a big difference, making this really big impact. So I am so thrilled to introduce to you today's podcast sponsor. They are the very last US family owned manufacturer of consumer goods products, products that you use every single day and you run out of them every single day. And on top of that, their products are healthier and safer for you, and they have been made here in the great USA. My family made the switch, and I am so happy that we did. And so is everyone else in the family because the products are amazing. So while these big giant corporations are just getting bigger and so many small businesses are really struggling to survive, why not help me in rooting for the underdog? And you know, I'm all about the underdog instead of these giant 11 conglomerates that control 97% of the North American consumer goods market. So if you're ready to make a difference and switch away to something bigger and better, go to switchaway.com/rule breaker, drop your information, and one of my friends will reach out to you directly. And let's all switch away together to better quality products that are healthier and safer for you and support family owned businesses, because together we can rewrite the business landscape and make a difference one person at a time.
Okay. Excellent question. Thank you for asking that. So this is where the psychology and the science kind of come together, because the beautiful thing about emotions is it's mechanical. And what I mean by that is there is an equation for it. It's not just, a lot of times people say, gosh, I'm in a bad mood today. Oh, why? Oh, I don't know. I'm just in a bad mood. Oh, well, is there something we can do about it? No, it'll pass. Right. So it's kind of like we feel like we are uh, the victim of our emotions, like they just come
Mhm.
and go without our permission,
Like you have no
consent, or
control over
approval.
it.
Right,
Yep.
right. But what I want you to consider is that the emotion that you were feeling, your brain created that emotion in, in alignment with what you're focused on. Now, this is super exciting to me because the how, like your question was like basically, how do we begin to interrupt this program and how do we start feeling better? The how is really simple. What you focus on, you feel. We've heard this statement lots of times. But what it actually means, it's not just some cute meme. What it actually means is where you place your focus, your brain se- sees like, okay, this is what we're focused on. We're focused on a problem that seems overwhelming. Oh, or Fletcher's scared, or he perceives this thing as a threat. Oh, so we have to kick in the chemicals that are going to create an emotion that is in alignment with the story that he's telling himself. So if it's a fearful based story, the body says we have to generate a fear-based emotion. So the chemicals start pumping out the adrenaline and the cortisol, right? And suddenly I'm feeling fearful. So imagine if you go to a movie, for instance, and you're in that movie, say for 2 hours, you might be laughing your butt off. You might be crying hard in some places. You might be, startled and fearful in others. And then you can be experiencing a roller coaster ride of emotions in that 2 hours. In fact, you might experience a greater variety of emotions in that 2 hours than you do all week long. And then you get present to the fact that, hold on a second, I just had all those emotions and all I was doing was watching light on a screen. It was not even real, right? So, I mean, I don't know about you, but there have been a few movies that I've seen in the movie theater where I was literally sobbing. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I probably should leave because I'm kind of making a scene here, right?
Yeah.
Les Mis was one of them. I just remember that I had to stay after everybody left and just get my cry out. It was like, I was just like so affected by
Yeah,
it.
pull yourself together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. But, but when you think about it, I was watching a movie. It's not real. It's just light on a screen. If you looked at the blooper reel, there were people acting up, cutting up, missing their lines, laughing. But the brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. It simply generates an emotional reaction based on where you place your focus. So, to come back to answer your question, how do we begin to do this? We begin to do it by deliberately placing our focus on things that are going to elicit a feel good chemical reaction in the brain.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the simple answer. Now, you still have to practice that, but that is essentially what we're learning to do.
I can see doing that. I can also see people going, okay, but I've been trying to do that and I still don't feel good, or what, like when things don't happen. Let's say, for example, somebody needs to make more money,
Hmm.
right? So they
Hmm.
have all this anxiety about it. And then so they focus on making I don't know, they have $1 million in the bank. I'm just some random number, right? They have
Sure.
$1 million in the bank. They focus on that. But then the next moment they go, oh, they're back again because
Yes.
that hasn't happened. So how do you, and I think that's part of focus. I think actually even the whole subject of money and lack of or money mindset is a big thing, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah.
So how do you get past that hurdle
Uh-huh.
so
Yes.
that you can be in the right state so that you can go and make as much as you want to make?
Right. So, okay. Excellent question. You got good questions this morning. I love it.
Well, I'm hoping
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So what you're beginning to address here is the program. So we have lots of different mindsets, right? We have a mindset around just about everything. We have a mindset around our self-image. We have a mindset around marriage. We have a mindset around health and fitness, finances, spirituality, sex, everything. We have a specific mindset around each of those things. So now we have to address and what underlies the mindset is a story. So you can be like, well, yeah, I want to make a whole bunch of money, but if your mindset, if your underlying story is that, come on, get real, I can't make that much
Mhm,
money. I'll try, but what's going to happen? It's not going to work out.
mhm,
Or, I mean, sure, it might work out to some degree, but it's not going to work out like it worked out for that person because things like that never happened to me. They only happen for other people. So we have to get clear about our underlying stories because remember, the brain is still going to create a chemical reaction called an emotion that's in alignment with the fundamental story that you have. And that program is hardwired, right? Neural pathways. We're talking about neural pathway, the circuitry in your brain. It's hardwired there. It's like an app. And remember what I said in the beginning, that application can only produce results that are in alignment with the program. So what we're talking about is reprogramming the brain. So we have to have an empowering story that we can begin to focus on long enough and repetitively and deliberately until the neural pathways begin to create a new program in the brain. You see, because unless there's another story, unless there's another program, the brain only has one option. It can only go back to that default program. So we have to provide another pathway, another program. And this takes time, but less time than you would imagine. It actually can happen very quickly. So I used to be I had a very scarcity set mindset when it came to finances,
mhm.
right? And I realized my fundamental story was completely disempowering when I
Yeah.
really got present to it. So I deliberately created a new story. And the new story is like, I live a life of massive abundance. I consistently create value, which returns to me in the form of money, gifts, and services. I attract mountains of money, which allow for a huge life of freedom, fun, and philanthropy. So
Mm.
this was a program that I deliberately set up in my mind. And I've said that same thing thousands of times. And I've said it when I'm in a peak state, right? When I'm riding my bike, when I'm running, when I'm swimming. I've said it over and over and over again. So now it's memorized and it actually is a program. So now I have two programs in the brain regarding finances. So when one of them, the old one, when that gets activated
Mhm.
and it doesn't feel good, I can immediately say, oh, hold on a second. I live a life of abundance. I consistently create value, which returns to me, blah, 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 blah. So now that's how I interrupt the old programming with the new programming. It immediately feels good. And Kathy, by the way, when I'm in that peak state and involved with my feel good story, do you think I'm feeling inspired and motivated?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And from there, I begin to take actions that are in alignment with that empowering story. When I'm involved with the old story, I take actions that are in alignment with that. And so that's kind of in a nutshell how we begin to do it. Come up with a deliberate and a feel-good story, right? For instance, for my marriage, I'm in my second marriage. My first marriage, I just couldn't hold it together. I didn't have the tools, right? I did on my best, but I couldn't hold it together. All right. That's on me. In this second marriage, we have a mantra, we have an incantation, and it's because I wanted to deliberately set up a program. And that is who we are is wide open communication, stronger than steel support, and a living illustration of joy, connection, and contribution. So anytime I start to go away from that, I'll feel the dissonance. I'll feel that. And I'll be like, whoa, whoa, hold on, what's going on? Oh yeah, wait, who am I in my marriage? Oh yeah, wide open communication, stronger than steel support, a living illustration of joy, connection, contribution. And it pulls me back. I get grounded.
Mhm.
Our stories matter. And they've been set up for us mostly without our permission, consent, or approval. And so I encourage your listeners, like, take this opportunity to begin to literally write down your story and commit that to memory so you can begin creating that new neural pathway.
Absolutely. It's almost like you're creating your identity. Because I
Yes.
think if
Yes.
you say that, there's so many things I think it creates, actually. I think if you say that and you believe it, it creates your identity. It creates a certain energy
Yes.
about yourself. I think there's probably a lot of synchronicity that happens at those times because you have this energy. You are working towards a, like, you know where you're going. You're
Mm-hmm.
working towards those things. And then things, what people will say, oh, things just fall into place. I get that a lot. People say to me, oh, gosh, it always seems like things just fall into place for you. And I love that when people say that because I'm like, yes, it's absolutely true. But they
Yes.
don't know the background because that only happens when I have the right mindset. And it's almost like your brain. I always think you're exactly what you're saying. Your brain is like a supercomputer, right? And
Yeah.
it's always working in the background. So if there's some big thing that I want to accomplish while I sleep, while I do anything, it's working in the background. And I will get these ideas. I will be like, oh, this is how I should do it. Or this is the next step that I wouldn't
Yes.
have ever kind of thought of, in a normal situation. But when you have yourself in that, I would say, not necessarily, I guess it's an abundance mindset, but like it's a yes mindset, I think is
Yeah.
what it is. A yes,
Yeah.
it's a winning mindset. Like there are no obstacles. I mean, that's kind of what the professional rule breaker is. Think outside the box. Let's fight. If there's an obstacle, let's go around it. Let's go above it. Let's go underneath it. Let's figure out a way. But I think when you do all of that, then the things, the next step, they either show up, it's not even necessarily they show up, you find them, right?
Yes.
And it falls into place.
Mm-hmm.
But then quite the opposite, right? When I'll just use myself as an example, when I'm not in that mindset or don't have that same strong conviction, it's more of a struggle.
Yes.
I think when you know your identity and you put it out there and you radiate that energy and everything that's about it, everything becomes easier.
Yes.
When you're the opposite, everything is so much more of a struggle. And
Yes.
I don't know about you, I don't like struggling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely don't like struggling. And you can even, when to talk about energy, some people are like, oh, that's woo woo or whatever. But just think about it. Because, like, I'm sure everybody out there has been in the room with somebody that you're kind of like, oh, and you want to move away from them for
Yeah.
whatever reason, even before they say anything or whatever, because, they're either angry, they got something, whatever, it's just something
Mm-hmm.
negative
Mm-hmm.
happening. And you can feel it. If you're open
Yes.
to it, you can actually feel it before you even start talking to somebody. And you see it in their body language as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're responding,
Mhm.
right? They're having a chemical reaction that's coursing through the nervous system,
Yep.
which affects their way they're behaving, the way they talk, the way they think. And yeah, and we pick up on all of that stuff. We're extremely sensitive beings. We pick up on all that. And and so yeah, and what you said was something important in there. You mentioned the word belief
Mhm.
and what people believe. And a belief is simply a sense of certainty, right? So you feel certain that things are going to work out. You said, gosh, things just seem to fall into place and work out for you, Kathy. Yeah, that's because Kathy has a sense of certainty. She believes
Mhm.
that things are going to fall into place, where other people are like, God, nothing ever falls into place for me.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
just can't catch a break, you
Yeah.
know?
And if you say that, guess what? You're not going to catch a break. Same thing.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm never going to be able to, make that amount of money, or I know I'm never going to be able to sell something. That's
Yes.
in the mindset of selling. Gosh, if you say, I can't do it, or I'm scared, or whatever it is, or this is slimy, well, sure enough, it will be.
Right. Right.
So you got to just completely make that shift into something that is fruitful, that
Exactly.
works for you. And I don't know, I always bring it back to who are you helping, right? If you are in this mindset of, I can't do anything, this whatever, A, you're not helping yourself. And I can guarantee you're not helping anybody else.
Yes.
And so if you're in that space, how miserable must you be?
Exactly.
Yeah, I recorded something, I don't think it's aired yet, but one of the things I said is, I don't ever want to be in the position that somebody feels sorry for me.
Mhm.
And if somebody does feel sorry for me, I know I'm in trouble. So,
Yeah.
and it's kind of that same thing. If you have, granted, there's things out of your control, right? That I'm
Yep.
not talking about those type of things, but things that you do have in your, it's exactly what you said. And it's the practice of what it is.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to ever be in the situation where someone's feeling sorry for me either, because it means that I'm really in a place of disempowerment.
Yeah.
And so, on that note, let's take a moment and just define where empowerment comes from, because this is a really great concept. So, the way I define them, if you want to feel empowered in your life, there's only one way to do it. Now, there's lots of ways to feel motivated, inspired, but like if you want to feel actually empowered in your life, you must be taking responsibility for a commitment that you have made. So
Mm,
this is frequently why people feel disempowered. Why? Number one, they've stopped taking responsibility for the commitment they made. Not a goal, but a commitment, right? So I'm committed to creating health and vitality in my life. That might be a commitment that a person makes. And they're all excited, they're inspired, they start taking action on that, right? And they feel empowered. They're like, oh my gosh, I went to the gym, I'm eating better, I'm meditating, I'm breathing, whatever, right? They're feeling inspired and empowered because they're taking responsibility for the commitment they made. And then something happens, right? They stop, for lots of different reasons, they stop taking responsibility for the commitment, and you can just see it in their countenance. There's a sense of disempowerment
mhm.
because they've stopped taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Then there's the other group of people who feel completely disempowered much of the time because they've never made a commitment for which to take responsibility.
Mm,
Okay. So they're not practiced at making commitments. They're just hoping life will work out for them, right? It's that hope strategy.
right.
And but it's minus the commitment, so they can't even begin to take responsibility for it. And the overall sense is then that of disempowerment. Does that make sense?
It's almost like a helplessness,
Yes.
or that you can't make a difference
Yes.
in any way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So interesting. So it's not only setting up, in essence, your identity and the practice of what you do, but then also finding the commitments that send you, that light you up, right?
Yeah.
And that send you, towards whatever path it is that is going to give you the juice. It's going to make you
Yes.
excited, it's
Yes.
passion, and whatever it might be.
Yes. And this is such a good conversation. So that reminds me
I
of
know, I
like,
was like, oh my gosh, we could go on for hours. We're going to definitely have to have you back as
so
a
so talk
frequent guest. Yes.
so talking about the juice, right? That lights you up.
Mhm.
So for me, that's putting out value. Like if we focus on putting out value, that feels really good, right? Because contribution, anytime you're contributing, it lights you up. And here's the magical thing about putting out value, Kathy, is there are two things that always follow value. So I stopped focusing on the amount of money that I'm generating because it was tripping me up. And I was like, this is causing me suffering. I'm done. I'm done with like setting my financial goals and blah, blah. I'm done with that. Instead, I'm focusing on putting out massive value.
Mhm.
Because what I know about value are three things. Number one, it feels good when you put out the value, but the two things that always follow value are compensation and opportunity.
Mm.
Okay. sometimes both, sometimes one. I'm not saying it happens every single time, but if you put out massive value, you will eventually find that compensation and or opportunity. And I think I would like rest my hat on this. This seems to be like some sort of universal truth that when a person puts out value, there's some level of compensation and or opportunity.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I've always had this saying, what comes around goes around.
Hmm.
So if you're putting out a bunch of massive value, there's things are going to come back to you because
Yeah.
you're doing that massive amount of value. For me, it's almost sales 101, right?
Yep.
Is
Hmm.
you provide this massive value to your customers so that they're going to come back to you over and over and over again. They're going to
Yes.
refer you to all their friends. They're going to talk about the experience of working with you because you're giving so much massive value.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but I think everywhere in your life, if you put out massive value, massive love, let's say to your spouse,
Yes.
there's that reciprocation.
Yes, exactly. And so I know I encourage your listeners to really ask this question, like, where am I putting out value? Where am I intentionally putting out massive value? Am I bringing that value to my marriage, like you said? Am I bringing it to my parenting? Am I bringing it to some of my friendships, right? Am I bringing it to my professional career? Am I bringing it to my spiritual life? Am I bringing it to my health and fitness?
Mhm.
Where is the value? And if you can't articulate it, if you can't identify it, then I encourage you to really get curious about like, oh gosh, what can I do? What can I do to bring real value?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. This is so good. It's just crazy, like crazy. I'm so happy that you're a guest on this show. Because in my mind, so as I'm thinking, I have a mind that multi-processes all the time. I'm thinking to myself, you are going to blow up and be really big. I'm
Well,
just
thank
telling
you for
you.
that.
Yeah, I feel it. And so remember to always be a friend of the show when everybody knows your name.
Absolutely.
Because there's just so much massive value that you are providing.
Hmm.
So I have to ask you this. I'm
Yeah.
just so curious because I think like you are at the point that you are probably because of some experiences that you had in your life. Was there a turning point?
Yeah, there was a turning point. And it had to do with a number of things. I had to get real honest with myself about why certain things weren't working out in my life. And I had to question my ways of being. And it was about taking radical responsibility for my life.
Mm,
I was very quick for many years. I mean, I've always been like into personal development. Literally was reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking when I was in
okay.
grade school. I was an odd
Oh,
kid.
wow.
Yeah,
Really?
I was
Wow.
super odd. I was just into it. I loved it. But I also had a lot of I indulged a lot in the blame game
Mm,
and early on into my adulthood. So I was always pointing the finger, right?
yep.
Not taking
Which is easy
responsibility.
to do. I mean, everybody does
Super
that.
easy. Right. Yeah.
Everyone does that.
Right. It was modeled for me. I picked it up along the line and I never questioned it. But then I realized, wait a second, that's not serving me. And I began to feel kind of icky about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And so what I made a conscious decision to take radical responsibility for my life. And so one year, I used to be in sales for a number of years, and I was always did well.
Mhm.
But I also realized that I still have this, there's still this fear. There's this fear of rejection still, even though I've been doing it for a long time and getting good results.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
It's the craziest thing. Yes.
Yeah. And so all the stuff that we've talked about previous to this moment began to congeal. And I realized, oh my gosh, I have to do something. I have to learn how to navigate this fear of rejection. And so I asked myself, well, what would be radical?
Mm,
I intentionally began to put myself into situations where I would make ridiculous and audacious requests of people that I didn't know, strangers,
okay.
with the intention of getting told no.
Okay.
Now, there were only two or three rules. Number one, they couldn't know why I was doing it. I couldn't do it to be impressing anybody. I couldn't be like with my friend, hey, I'm going to go do a rejection experiment. And number three, it actually had to scare me. I had to,
Ooh, that's an
the
interesting one.
yes, the
Okay.
ask had to be so scary. And I had to think it was ridiculous enough that they would actually say no. Okay.
Gosh, give me an example. I mean, I'm really curious now. Whoa.
Yeah. So one of my favorites, because it scared me so much, was I was in Southern California and I was walking down the road, this neighborhood on a morning walk. And I'd been doing, this was my year of rejection experiments.
Okay.
And so I had to do a certain number every week. And I knew I had to do one that day. And I was just walking down the road. I wasn't thinking about it really, but I was walking and I saw out of the corner of my eye in the garage of this house that I was passing by, the garage door was open and there was a ping pong table. And I just knew right away. It just came into my mind. I was like, no, 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 don't do this one. No, let's skip this one, right? Because in my mind, I was like, you need to go up to that house and knock on the door and ask somebody to play a game of ping pong in their garage with you. And for me, this was terrifying. Why? Because I was crossing a private physical boundary, right? The property line, knocking on a stranger's door and asking them to play ping pong, a game of ping pong. So it's kind of like there's this level of intimacy. Like I'm asking one person to come and play this
Right.
game, right? So, and I struggled there. I was just trying to continue to walk on because I did not want to do this. But then I got like present to this is really fearful for you, Fletcher. So do it.
Mhm.
And so I walked up there, I knocked on the door, and there was a dog inside, and the dog was started to bark, 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 bark. And then in a few seconds, a woman came to the door and she said, hi, can I help you? I said, hi, yeah, my name's Fletcher. I live in Washington State. I'm just up here visiting some people. But I was walking and I noticed you're have a ping pong table in your garage. And I was wondering if anybody in your house would be up for a game of ping pong this morning. And she said the exact same thing that almost everybody says when I do these crazy experiments. What? Right. That's like
Yeah.
literally like what? Right. Because it's a pattern interrupt. They're not expecting this, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And so I like, oh, I'm Fletcher. And I went through the whole thing again. And she says, she said, do we know you? Like, no, I'm from Washington State. And you just want to play ping pong? Yep, I just want to play ping pong. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's up for it. And she says, just a second. She closes the door, and I hear some talking behind the door. And a few seconds later, door opens up again, and this time it's the husband, and he's like, "Hi, can I help you?" So I go through my spiel again, right? And he says the same thing. Do we know you? No, you don't know me, but I just want to play ping pong. If anybody wants to, you just want to play ping pong. Yeah. Just a second. Closes the door. There's more talking behind the door. And then a few seconds later, a young teenager boy opens the door and he says, hey, my dad says you're looking to play ping pong. You want to play? And I was like, yeah, let's go play ping pong. So we went and played a couple games of ping pong and then I was on my way. But this, Kathy, is frequently what happened. I would make these ridiculous, audacious requests. And instead of getting rejected, people would say yes.
Yes. Hmm.
Isn't that wild?
There's a lot of learning, I think, that comes from doing something that you're scared to death of doing, right?
Yes,
And as well as that fear of rejection. And even if you were to get rejected, there's a lot of learning that comes from that.
so much.
I think rejection is great. I know that sounds really bizarre, but
It
maybe it
is.
is. And again, I just literally, it's so weird that we're talking about this because I literally just recorded something about rejection and doing a
Oh, did you?
rejection challenge. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Just to, I'm challenging people, go out there, 10, get 10 rejections in a day,
Yes. Right
whatever it
on.
is, because you learn so much, right?
Yes.
And then everything becomes easier on top of that. And
Absolutely.
I think bottom line, people learn that, what's the worst thing they're going to do? They're going to say, eh,
Yeah.
like, who are you? No, or whatever. Nobody's going
Yeah.
to kill you for it, hopefully.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, the two biggest takeaways for me during doing all these rejection experiments was number one, people frequently will say yes. Number two, they, when they do say no, they're not rejecting you as a person. They're simply rejecting the offer.
Yep. Hmm.
And I can live with that, right? It doesn't kill me. So there was so much learning going on. But that's an example of like taking radical responsibility for your life, really going to that next level, getting out of your comfort zone in a big way.
Yeah, I love, absolutely love that. Oh my gosh. So great. So great. And that's such a great story as well, too. It was so funny because as you're saying it, I'm thinking, I bet you they're going to have a teenager. Like I could visualize this in my mind. I bet you they have a teenager. But the
Yes.
teen, and sure enough, it was. That's so wonderful. Well, my gosh, we could talk forever. There's so much I want to ask you, but I do want to ask you this
Yeah.
before, a couple of things before we jump off. First off, what makes you a rule breaker? Because I know you are a rule breaker.
Yeah. So, good question. And one of the things that allowed me to do so well in my career in sales for many years was I was a rule breaker.
Mhm.
And so, what I would do was number one, I would find the decision maker's phone number, email, physical address,
Right.
and I would not go up the ladder through the proper channels. I would go directly to this person
Track them
whenever
down, hunt
whenever I
them down.
could. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I consider myself a rule breaker in that because like people say, oh no, you can't call that company. That's $1 billion company.
Who
You can't
cares?
just you
Why
can't just
not?
reach out to them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
actually you can. So like one of my favorite stories was like I'm here in Washington State. I call some very well-known company back on the East Coast in Parsippany, New Jersey, and somehow I got his personal phone number. And I don't remember how I got it, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing this."
Yep.
So I called him up and I said, "Hey, you don't know who I am, but I'm going to be in New Jersey next week, and if you have 5 minutes, I'd love to sit down and show you this product that will absolutely impact the way you're doing business." And that's really about all I said. And I could not believe it. But he said, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, I did not have any plans to be in New Jersey next week
But you
unless he
made
said yes.
it.
But
Right.
the moment he said yes, I was off. I booked my ticket. I went there and he gave me that 5 minutes. It turned into, probably 20, 25 minutes. And that turned out to be an extremely lucrative contract that went on for many years by just breaking the rules and calling the decision maker.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, the stories. I bet you and I could tell about that because I get these flashbacks of all the crazy things that I did. People, I think, don't understand, especially when it says it doesn't matter if it's low ticket or high ticket, but high ticket, you will find a way if you're a really good salesperson and you'll find out who exactly, because a lot of times it's even hard to find out who really makes the decision, right? But you'll find that out and you will track those people down so that coincidentally you're sitting next to them at an event, or
Yes.
you happen to be walking down the same hallway, or you're in a parking lot, or whatever it can be. You just go and track them down. And what I have found is people will say that exact same thing that you said. Oh no, you can't contact them directly or whatever. But then if you talk to them a little bit and just kind of, I would say almost warm them up, they're like, wow, okay, this is really different. All right, go here. This
Yeah.
person knows, or here's the phone number, or they're going to be here at this time, or this is the person. Yeah. I even just think about, there was a company at one time that I really wanted to work for, really huge company, just here in the international company here in the US. They had, I think, 600,000 employees, a lot of people.
Wow.
But finding the person that I needed to talk to in this particular company, where you can't even like call their 800 number and find anything out, I tracked it down. Like people were just like blown away. And so when I finally got, it was the same thing. They're like, how did you find me? And I'm like, this is what I will do to any, I will do the same exact thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get radical, right?
Yeah.
And I define radical as a departure from the norm. And
Yeah.
that it might be a small thing or it could be a big thing, right?
That's the same thing what a rule breaker is. It's a departure from a norm. It's
Yeah.
thinking outside the box.
Yes.
Everybody is so scared. They've been taught to stay within parameters.
Mm,
I'm not talking about anything that would ever hurt anybody or break a law or
sure.
anything like that,
Hmm.
because the ultimate goal is doing something that you're going to help someone, help a
Exactly.
company, whatever, right?
Yes.
And,
Hmm.
and so think outside the box, and do that. So I love this. So that's so great. So Fletcher, where can people find you?
Sure. So you can go to fletcherellingson.com or thepracticeoffeelinggood.com. It'll take you to the same place. And you can, if you want to get a copy of the book, go to Amazon and you can order The Practice of Feeling Good there. And for any of your listeners out there, if there's somebody who wants to get a copy of my book, I will send you a free copy for the first person who emails me. And all you have to do is email me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com and reference Rule Breakers. And
Ooh,
okay.
like that. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, everybody needs to run to that. My gosh, I definitely want your book too. Yeah, gosh, this has been so great. We'll have to have you back. I'm so grateful that you are on the show. I know it's going to reach a lot of people. This is really going to help, because I think we spend so much time in life maybe feeling a way that we don't like to feel.
Hmm.
And I think your book and your practice and all your things that you're talking about will certainly make a big difference. And so everybody that's out there is listening, remember all the wisdom. My gosh, there was like so much that Fletcher brought up, but just a few things is the massive value. What value are you providing, and what are you practicing today?
Hmm.
Are you
Hmm.
practicing the things that are going to help you feel better, feel like you're heading the right path, maybe towards success, whatever it is that would make you feel like that you are, I guess, feeling good, right?
Yeah, feeling good, right? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
So,
and I want to just take a moment, Kathy, and acknowledge you and appreciate you for the contribution that you are putting forward. You're a source of kindness and contribution, making a difference for others, and thank you for that.
oh, I'm so thank you. I'm honored to have you on the show. My goal, I just remember even being a young child and thinking this, but maybe thinking, I don't know if I can do this. But my goal has always been to make a difference in the world,
Mm.
big or small.
Hmm.
And even if I can make a difference in that one person,
Yes.
I have reached my goal, my dream, whatever it is that's out there. So, and
Love
everybody
that.
that's listening, you guys can do exactly the same thing if you just help that one person. I know you can help more than one, but just think about it. If you help that one person, that could be a world leader. That could be somebody
Exactly.
that negotiates peace across the world. That could be somebody that finds the cure for cancer. You
Yes.
don't know who you're going to help reach the next level. So go
Mm.
out there, everyone. Think radical. I kind of like that. Think radical. Go out there, break some rules, be fierce, and also have the practice of feeling good today and every day.
Yeah. Good
So,
stuff.
yeah, absolutely. If you like this episode, which I'm sure you did, make sure to share it with all your friends. Tell everybody about Fletcher Ellingson, and we will have all his links in the show notes. And don't forget, send the email out to him. See who can get that free book. All
Yeah,
right.
right on.
All right. Thank you, Fletcher.
Thank you.